Hello class, today I'll be doing my final country presentation on Vietnam. Vietnam, meaning Southern Viet, signifying people and land of the Viet ethnic group in the south. It reflects both ancient ethnic identity and a geopolitical assertion of independence and unity. Many people migrated from China further down south. The Viet people were an ethnic group, and Nam means south in many Asian languages. So Vietnam pretty much just means the Viet ethnic group who went south. So this is Vietnam on the map in Southeast Asia. The red arrow at the top of the highlighted country is pointing at North Vietnam. The green arrow is pointing at Central Vietnam. And the pink arrow is pointing at South Vietnam. Political climate. Vietnam has a very interesting political climate as it is led by the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. It is a communist party and is one of only 5 remaining communist governments in the world today. Their current president is To Lam, CIA 2024. The structure of the Vietnamese government is very interesting because it almost mimics that of the United States government, having 3 main branches, a legislative, executive, and judiciary branch. But the big difference is that they have one party making all the decisions, and that is the Communist Party. Although when the term communist has a very negative light on it, Vietnam is very far from the very negative aspects of communism. Although they are a communist government, the Vietnamese people enjoy many freedoms. Although they do experience many freedoms, the government does play a big role in limiting influence from the Western world. They do that by restricting news, restricting online, what you can do online, things like that. They still have a long way to go, and the communist government has yet to give up their iron fist hold on the country. Vietnamese cuisine. The Vietnamese food is similar to that of the rest of Southeast Asia in the sense that rice is heavily used. Rice is actually used in some spiritual worship. We'll get to that later, but that's how significant rice is to the people in this region. Rice being the main catalyst for many dishes in the country. Some popular dishes as seen right here are pho, and the other one is com tam, which everybody should know what pho is. Pho is delicious. It's a rice noodle dish, usually served with beef, pork, or chicken in a very flavorful broth. Cilantro is used heavily, bean sprouts, many other veggies, and the spice is also you can play with the spice, obviously. Com tam translates to broken rice. It's a mix of pork, vegetables, rice noodles. These are the 2 most popular dishes in Vietnam. The Vietnamese orient towards, I've already said rice, but they orient towards kind of like a street style. Many of the dishes are very simple. Art. Vietnamese art has been mostly popularized by their intricate and grand statues and sculptures. Many of these statues and sculptures have the theme of religious deities and spiritual beings, mainly assertive with the religion of Buddhism. because that is the main religion, and they make a lot of statues and sculptures. Other forms of art are paintings. This one seen here on this slide is a painting called M. Doi. It's by the artist Tran Van Can. I absolutely butchered that, but I tried. Traditional art, such as paintings and drawings, aren't as popular here, but this oil painting is considered one of the greatest works of art to come out of Vietnam. Another form of art that I believe is heavily put on display is the clothing that the Vietnamese wear for some of their festivals and gatherings, like the Tet. Tet is a Lunar New Year, but many of the people dress up in very bright, vibrant clothing with many beads to show it's representative in their culture, and that's another form of art that the Vietnamese practice. The predominant belief system or religion in Vietnam is Buddhism, with almost 60% of the population aligning themselves with the religion. The minority of the population has been Christianity, particularly Catholicism. Many other religions exist in the many small tribes throughout the country, mainly practicing ancestor worship and other forms that are hard to differentiate. I think the Vietnamese belief system is one of the most defining aspects of their culture because of how many things are centered around it. Many of the traditional meals that they eat are indicative of a religious gathering of that sense. Like we saw in art, many of their statues are based off of religion. That goes hand in hand with just about every other topic of culture. A lot of things of culture could be seen as guided by a religion that a certain group of people follow. Music and dance. Like I was saying earlier, the Vietnamese celebrate many different festivals, many different religious holidays, things like that. And the music is pretty interesting as well. Vietnam's musical background comes from a pool of about 54 different ethnic groups, TAP 2025. These groups have created a fusion of different tribal traditional music, which adds to all of the festivities around all of their holidays. Later in the 18th century, developing a formal style of music called court music. This music is very calming and has a slow tempo. In today's Vietnam, the most popular category of music is V-pop, or Vietnamese pop music. You could compare this to K-pop or Korean pop in the sense. It's high, upbeat, tonal music that usually centers around the trends of today's world. The most listened to music in Vietnam today is V-pop, with obviously the population practicing their traditional music, or more ancient style of music for the festivities and religious gatherings. Communication. Vietnam surprisingly speaks mostly Vietnamese, as one would think. The language uses a Latin-based script and is a tonal-based language. The language also has many different dialects, as there are over 54 different ethnic groups, like I discussed in the previous slides. 54 different ethnic groups and thousands of different tribes. So you could imagine what things people pick up and take to another tribe, and how many different aspects of their language get carried out, and what gets picked up and what doesn't. These dialects can mostly be narrowed down to 3 geographical locations, though. like we saw in an earlier slide, the region North, South, and Central Vietnam. This language impacts this country, so much because there's a lot of fusion and many different people coming from different tribes to share different practices, entail making a giant mixing pot of language tendencies. Boroditsky, 2010. The pride amongst the people that speak this language is immense. It's a very difficult language to learn and also reinforces early Confucian ideas of respect in the social hierarchy in Vietnam. So pretty much that's meaning like how you speak and the tone in which you speak the language says a lot about you and has a very social impact on how you communicate with other people. Wen Trung, 2016. The technological industry. Vietnam has been on the hot trail lately, making great strides to bolster its microchip manufacturing. As many people know, the spotlight is on Taiwan in this category, as they make over 90% of the world's microchips. In the next 10 years, Vietnam will have jumped from 1% to around 12% in the global manufacturing leaderboards. Financial Times, 2024. This goes to show how globalization can bring tremendous growth to a country. Vietnam has pledged over 50,000 engineering and IT college graduates in the next 5 years to help bolster their technology field. This level of technological advance in such a short amount of time is very impressive and is one of the exceptional results of globalization. It is easy to get desensitized to advancement for overall progress of a society, especially when another country, Taiwan, seems to have a chokehold on the industry. But that doesn't mean that Vietnam cannot profit off the same technology and succeed in doing so. Lubier, 2021. The three aspects of culture I wanted to highlight that we didn't necessarily individually discuss would be the customs and courtesies, festivals and gatherings, and respect of Vietnam and how they hold their social respect on the level that they do. Each of these topics could very well be a subtopic of larger aspects of culture, but I believe they are very important to understand individually. Customs and courtesies in Vietnam include bowing and shaking hands as a greeting, or taking your shoes off to eat a meal and when entering someone else's house. The other aspect I'd like to touch on is the festivals and gatherings of this country. They celebrate many different holidays. The biggest holiday that they celebrate is Tet, or a Lunar New Year. It's the most important, and a lot of the things practiced for this holiday are that we practice here in America. They cook their traditional foods, they have family reunions, and they like to clean the house to sweep away bad luck. This holiday usually lasts 7 days, and many festivals on the national level are held for it. Just like I was stating earlier about the clothing and the music and dance, this all kind of adds to the Tet Lunar New Year, the Tet festivals. They dress up in their clothing. Everybody comes together. There's dancing in the street, giant parades, everything like that. I think that's culturally amazing. The last thing I'd have to be is the respect of individuals on an individual level and as a community. The country is centered around respect for elders, and they have a deep sense of community. Buddhism has many pillars of Confucianism, and respect for oneself and thy community is a huge pillar in Confucianism, therefore in Buddhism as well. Respect is shown by the customs and courtesies shared by the people, and also how the Vietnamese speak to each other, as I mentioned in previous slides. I think these three topics were less touched on. I think they're a smaller bit of the giant picture, but I think they all impact a country's culture significantly. Here are my references. Thank you.